and thank you for joining me for the Vampire Talk Show. I'm your host, Valaine. Val to my friends. My roommate discovered my coffin under the concrete floor of the basement in her new house and woke me up from a 100-year nap. Now I'm reconnecting with old friends, making new ones, and of course, making a podcast. Tonight's show is going to be spooky AF, as the kids say. But first, let's talk about the theater. In general, going to see stage plays is a joy and a privilege. So much work goes into a performance that no one will ever see again. Even if you do the same show every year with the same actors on the same stage with the same props, the show is still different because humans, unlike myself, change over time. So why would you come to the theater just to destroy the magic for everyone? And by destroy, I mean eviscerate. I attended a local theater performance recently, and behind myself was a family of 6. 2 parents and 4 boys, all seemingly under the age of 10. The play was not a children's play. It was a classic, one of my favorites. But I couldn't enjoy it because this family was terrible. The children were talking through the entire thing, asking, "What's happening now? What's happening now? Is it over? Can we go?" They also proceeded to drop an entire bag of Skittles down the aisle, and I heard every single drop and skid. Popcorn was thrown and all over the floor. They also spilled at least 3 giant sodas. The parents were just as bad as the children. They were talking and being loud with their concessions. The actors were seemingly distracted by all this nonsense as well. At intermission, the whole family went and got more concessions from the bar to, I suppose, throw around and drop and make noise with. And right when the second act was about to start, the father of the family alerted the theater that his son was missing. After a good 15 minutes and a half report over the phone to the police, the child was found outside. A passerby saw the child had been locked out of the theater and flagged someone down in the window of the door. I don't have children by choice, but it doesn't mean I hate kids. I know kids will be kids, but hopefully in kid spaces. Here's a tip to any parents who think their child is ready for a stage play. Sit them down at home to watch a movie that isn't a child's movie. I'm not saying Terminator 2. I'm just saying something that is not geared specifically towards them. If the child goes the entire length of the film without speaking or getting up, they are ready to join the masses of theatergoers. If not, maybe wait another year, get a babysitter, and have a night out. Let's go ahead and get on with the show. Tonight's guest is Beckie-Ann Galentine. She is what you might call a paranormal influencer. She is this new crop of paranormal investigators that have taken to TikTok and Instagram and have really pulled in a new generation of weirdos, which I really appreciate. Anyway, so welcome to the show, Beckie-Ann Galentine.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You're welcome, you're welcome. So, my dear, I have heard recently that you were actually around here over the weekend doing some filming. Do you wish to divulge a little bit of what you were up to?
Sure. So I just spent the past 5 days investigating 5 different locations that had never been investigated before, back to back. It was grueling, exhausting, but I think I had the most profound paranormal experience of my career. And it started in a town called Brownsville, Pennsylvania, a town left behind by the mining industry, the exhaustion of resources, the steel industry, and all that's left are these people who live there and the buildings as they collapse around them. So,
Oh, that sounds so tragic. You know, it's actually been in my experience that the most haunted of places are these liminal spaces where industry has really forsaken their human counterpart and have abandoned them to poverty and sometimes drugs and alcohol and whatnot. Usually, the more socioeconomic shakeup there is in a location, the more haunted it seems. Do you find that to be true as well?
I think you get this idea of people who are constantly sending out that energy of, when am I next? And they get stuck. It's like this oppression that the town holds over them, but you can't escape it. It's generational. It's in the DNA to not be able to leave. And that's why even when someone leaves, it's like, oh, they left. They're too good for us now. They wouldn't live here forever. But yes, you do see, struggling to cope and trying to live within their means. And that is a lot of the themes that we explored in this. And Brownsville specifically has something that is rooted in oppression. And that is that the first and last meetings of the Whiskey Rebellion in the 1700s in Pennsylvania were in Brownsville. And not only were they there, they were at the house that we began the investigation.
Oh, wow. The Whiskey Rebellion. I think I recall something about that. Could you remind me, though?
Sure. So we have these farmers that fight for their means. They're providing for their family, and the government comes in and wants to impose a tax on the whiskey. And they decide, we do not want to let this happen. So they have these meetings, and they're very secretive, and they're moving in these secretive manners, and they don't want to share their actual opinion, and there's discord. And finally, they decide to end it ultimately by tar and feathering the tax collector, a very violent way to go.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, I should say so. I've seen a tar and feathering before. It is not a pretty sight.
No.
And also, I lived through Prohibition, and that was hell on earth. So I say here for the folks that are saying, damn the tax man, when it comes to whiskey. Although whiskey is not my favorite. I do enjoy a gin, though. Do you have a favorite cocktail yourself?
I'm a gin and tonic kind of person.
Hey, there we go. Yes. Well, we'll be clinking glasses before you know it. Fantastic. Well, so in Brownsville, you are filming, and when you go to locations, what are your favorite tools to take with you?
We had everything on deck for this investigation. We had digital recorders, cameras, intuitives, tarot cards. We had a good blend of both sides. And if you recall what I said about the Whiskey Rebellion, you have two sides. So this whole investigation kind of starts out with the clashing of those two sides. It was true discord, but for me, I like to have intuition. And one of the themes I've really been exploring is not to outsource your intuition. So I would say if you're, looking into an investigation, you start intuitively to drive yourself in the direction, and then you have to validate it with something tangible like the equipment. And the other validations that we had received did not align with things that could be contained on the camera, which was the synchronicities that created this common thread that ended with us being like, how? I believe in the paranormal. How did this happen? So I would say I like a perfect balance. I'm a Libra. I want both sides of the investigation. I don't want to go in hard and bang on the walls and say it's old wiring and pipes, but there was a lot of that as well. And there were other things that just didn't really make sense.
Yes, I find that a good paranormal investigator has a good bit of skepticism inside themselves, where they're willing to admit when something is rusty old pipes. and not something more. We know that more is out there, obviously. I mean, I've had ghosts on the talk show, but we we tend to. Although I will say, sometimes it's the opposite is the problem. I do know a paranormal investigator who talks himself out of every experience they've ever had. Even if they have a shared experience with someone else, they could see some sort of apparition crossing their hallway with another person and then talk themselves out of it, out of seeing it. Have you encountered that yourself in the field?
Yes, there are people that will share their stories with me, and they always say, I don't believe in the paranormal, but I did have this one instance, and I'm like, wow, this is it. This is what we live for. And then they're like, no, this is not, and they wither it away to nothing. And that's fine, because I will never interject my opinions into someone. And we actually witnessed this over this weekend where the cameras weren't on, and I looked at the guy who was filming and he had a 3-inch scratch on his neck. Now, I'm the first person to say a scratch doesn't mean that it's nefarious. Along with everything else, it doesn't mean malicious intent, but I still am going to acknowledge that a 3-inch scratch appeared from your ear down to your neckline in one line where you would have had to put that there yourself. And the cameras were rolling, so there's no way you did. And he goes, oh, not me. Stop saying I got scratched. And I was like, okay, all right, you didn't get scratched. I'll keep that for my brain, but we won't put that in the documentary. So it's so funny, too, because what people are represented, or what we are representing in this specific instance, is actually going to be less intense than what we were actually seeing.
Oh, wow. That's... I cannot wait to see this, actually. Everything that you're talking about sounds quite different from what people are used to in terms of paranormal documentaries and television and whatnot. And this is not your first foray into making a paranormal documentary, correct?
Sure. Most of the time, the documentary is, here's a haunted location with a known spirit, contact spirit, and we move on with our life. So I'm working with a production crew who's learning the paranormal. So I'm teaching them as they're filming me. And this is the first time that I realized that you can't show it on film, an accurate representation. And I am like, honest to a fault. So the first time, we go and it's like, okay, here's what the equipment represented, and we did pure pandemonium. The second one, it was very standard. Like, we contact my medium friend, we get validation from the equipment, story follows a linear line. This one ends with me screaming at the directors that there's a concurrent parallel storyline going on, in addition to what's being represented in the filming, that is going on, that we are all experiencing, that's changing our lives and blowing our mind, and they're not showing it. And they're like, well, how can we prove it to the audience? I'm like, well, you pull in a witness. You'll pull in a witness and take their word at face value. Take me as the expert. I'm telling you, the first day, someone finds 100-year-old skeleton key, but then they lose their own keys. Chris got scratched. The water starts pouring black from the sink, and then the owner of the house yells, the house is attacking, and she leaves and leaves her keys behind. I'm like, please let us go to the location where we started and go through this one more time. Ooh. And I didn't know why I was so adamant that we needed to return to this location. I'm like, we have to go back. And they're like, Becky, but we already went to the tavern. Why would you want to go back? I'm like, I just have this feeling. My friend pulls the Emperor card, and I knew I needed to take charge and get everyone back. And then finally they said, okay, well, listen. And we went back and we finished the course of the investigation. And but the point of all of this is that I had to advocate and break the fourth wall, which is filmed, to get back to where we needed. And the activity that we experienced following that was like, oh, this is what happened.
Well, good for you for taking charge and for really advocating for your own creative process and everything, especially as a woman in this field, which there aren't many. It is nice to hear that you're taking charge and really giving people the what for in order to tell the true story that you have experienced. Um, so, in terms of paranormal investigating and locations and whatnot, do you have a favorite spirit?
A favorite spirit?
Yes, like if you have encountered a spirit that you've talked to and whatnot, do you have a favorite one that maybe you have talked to multiple times or have experienced and it was quite pleasant? Anything of note?
Sure. So outside of familial connections, I did have an interaction with the lost children of the Alleghenies with my friend Jules. And it really was just like beautiful. And it was like we were meant, we even said we're like co parenting these ghost children. And the next day, after interacting with these lost children, she goes to the store and sees a book that says Lost Children. And I was like, amazing, perfect. I can't believe that happened. But outside of that, like, this weekend specifically, I have two people that people tend to feel are around me, and I personally know that they're around me from my past and my family, and they both came in clutch this weekend. I can't explain it. Like, I had this friend pass away years ago, and I've always felt like she was with me and interested in what I was doing because she was always following everything. And the director looks at my other friend that was there and called her my other friend's name. And it's not like a common name. I was like, she's here. And then my other friend is channeling and she's like, I'm picking up on an older woman with Becky. I was like, my grandma's here. They didn't understand why they were there. Now I know. I know. And I'm not that kind of person. I'm not that kind of like this, let's pull in these guides. And it just happened in a way that it probably changed the way I'll be thinking about the field for a long time.
Absolutely. Yeah, so when it comes to spirit guides and whatnot, it it is something that I think a lot of people have an idea of what that means in their heads, and they don't really tap into their own experiences with ancestry and whatnot, which, you know, I encourage a lot of people to reach out to your ancestors because they have a lot of wisdom in one way or another. But that's wonderful that you have your friend with you as well. Did you investigate with them while they were alive?
No.
Oh.
She just always was on board with every project that I took on. So it would be, oh, Becky's doing pinup stuff. Becky sells vintage clothing. Any project I ever had in my life, she would just hype me up to a point where I was embarrassed. And I was like, why are you saying this? And I didn't believe in mediums until I went to Salem and I sat down and the medium said, there's someone with you that has blue hair. And I knew her profile picture had red hair. So I'm like, that's very specific that you would know that. And it always stuck with me. So I always knew that she was there. And I was like, I'm trying to have dreams with her in it. And they said, you know, she's not ready yet for that. So I think it's just, this was something where I would say she's with her family, obviously, and other people. But this situation that transpired just made her kind of come in, cross her arms and look at what was going on. And I think it was the same. I know it in my heart. I'm like, why of all names did he say this very specific name? Well, I'll tell you the name. It's Fran. It's a very specific name. To just throw that out, I was like, huh.
Yes, okay. You don't hear that name.
And I didn't realize why until I stepped out of it, that I was like, they were there to make sure we knew what was going on.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes, so your celestial bestie basically had your back even beyond the grave, which I really love that idea. And you also know, you always know who your ride or dies are in you know, the tougher moments of your life. And I love the idea of that proceeding afterwards as well. What a lovely thought. So, I didn't even ask you. Do you frequent the theater yourself?
You know, I've been to a few haunted theaters, but I'm not a huge theater person. There is a haunted theater by me. It's called the Bird Theater, and I want to get inside very badly, but I don't frequent the theater.
Oh, yes. It's not for everyone. Although haunted theaters definitely. I feel like every theater is haunted. Everybody has a story. Even the theater that my producer Ali works at is haunted as well. She likes to investigate there with folks. Although she's only investigated it like one time. Yeah, she's dying to go back. No pun intended there. So recently, I've seen on the socials some activity happening with a couple of dolls that have recently come into your possession. Do you wish to speak on that a little bit for our listeners?
Sure. So most people don't know the origin of these dolls, and they're assuming that I just bought a haunted object on eBay. But these came from Ryan Matthew Cohen of the show Oddities, who collects literally antique, cursed looking artifacts. He has human remains in his house. He's very well known for his collection, and he's a steward. He's a custodian, and he has a great respect for these. And for all of these years, he felt like nothing was paranormal. And I've been to his house. First thing people ask, are things haunted? He had these dolls and he shared them on social media, and he's like, well, I finally did it. I've been haunted. And I said, good. Like, I thought it was kind of a joke. And he said, no, it's been ghastly. He told me a little bit about what was going on. The dolls had moved, their mouths fell out, he had insulted them. The hands that he collects, these Victorian hand models, came down crashing, broke the head open. He has car problems. One of his cars, a hose was like physically disconnected. How would that even happen? Another car broke down. He had all this stuff, but he wanted to hang on to them a little bit longer. And eventually it devolved to him messaging me in the middle of the night saying, they need to go. It's an emergency. And I was like, yep, I'm on board. So I said, salt them, create a barrier of protection between your house and the dolls, send them to me. He did. He sent them to me. Everything's been good for him for about a month. I will say, since they were with me, it hasn't. I'm like on the fence of whether or not it started, because I had a really rough week and my transmission flew out. So I've kept that kind of secret, but there's been a lot of rough things happening this week, and I'm like, is it the dolls? Is it the planets? Like, I'm not sure. So these dolls are the first thing that I brought into my house that I felt like I wanted to give them energy. I wasn't initially going to post about them on social media. Ryan documented in his book. It's not a secret, but I wanted to see if I could kind of charge them. And they went viral. There were like 15 million views of all of our experiences with these dolls. And I realized that I could maybe get them to start being active. And we did catch them moving on the camera. The light went out, and as the light is turning back on, the mouth falls out. That was documented. I was alone. It was interesting. And that was 2 weeks ago. There was no activity since then. I've tried to interact with them in different ways. But now, after this week, I'm certain that what I experienced and what I'm experiencing is more tied to not listening to my intuition and not following my gut and outsourcing my intuition in some capacity. And I don't think it's all related, but I'm not entirely sure.
Yes. I believe that things align, whether they're planets, haunted objects, or, people in your life. And when it's a perfect storm, it's hard to discount anything.
Yes.
As someone who's been in sync storms before, it's something you want to talk yourself out of.
Yeah.
Indeed. Oh my goodness. Well, that's fantastic. I watched the videos of these dolls and everything, and the light turning out really got me. I was actually watching that while in bed, about to go to sleep, which was a mistake on my part. In my coffin, I should say.
You know, Ryan didn't even watch it himself. I called him to see if he's still good. What people don't realize when you're on social media is you see some of it, but you don't know I'm still working. I'm still at work. So I call and I said, Ryan, are you guys good? He said, yes. They told me they had heard footsteps, all these other things that had happened. I was like, this is way more intense than I thought. And I said, you know, they moved, right? And Regina was like, no. And I said, don't watch it. They said, we haven't watched any of the videos of the dolls because we don't even want to think, like, they are so done. They are so done. And I believe them because, like I said, when it comes from someone like Ryan, who's very grounded, works with museums, has objects in his house that are like, you know, centuries old. I knew it was true, but to your credit, yes, that video was unsettling. And I knew when I put it out that people would say this didn't happen. And I wouldn't care if the mouth fell open. I wouldn't care if the light turned off and on. I cared because it happened in sync. And I have the audio. The heat didn't click on. It was just something that happened. Mm-hmm. And I've really examined it. I showed myself trying to debunk. I'm like, you're going to just have to believe me. I know what it looks like, but I did not. Because they were like, why don't you put another camera? And I'm like, I didn't think anything was going to happen. Their mouths have stayed closed since. So it's not like they just fall open all the time or something. It's just a weird incident. And, you know, people don't realize how much it affects people too. And that I have a responsibility to be transparent and honest with the people who were traumatized. Traumatized is the word by it.
Absolutely traumatized. Oh my goodness. Well, I hope the dolls do not screw around with you further in a negative capacity. Although I know it is thrilling to see activity come from objects. And the burden of proof on a paranormal investigator, the amount of proof that paranormal investigators have to procure for people to believe them seems to be a little bit on the heavy side. What I'm saying is that sometimes when we give simple explanations for things, and that simple explanation is something that is paranormal, it is never believed until we have to get rid of every single factor and we have to prove, we have to debunk. And it's a frustrating process. Do you find yourself being frustrated by it?
Well, it's definitely a disappointment when it starts off and you get something you really think is great and you chip away at it and then all you're stuck with is an apple core, right? It's like you take a little bit away each time and it's like, well, this isn't much. But then there are times like this past weekend where it's like, yes, we could debunk 25% of it. 75% of it can't be explained. And there's no way we can fabricate this unless we truly went in with the intent of fabricating it. So there are just times where I wouldn't say it's frustrating. I'd say it's, exciting. We start looking at stuff, and when we realize we truly can't explain and we finally get that kernel that it's just like universally incredible, it's worth it. And that is where I like sit with it. The frustrating part is it's kind of fun, and I'll never get angry if there's conflicting data. If someone tells me, hey, I don't think, I'll be the first to admit I'm wrong. But there are times where, like I said, like this weekend, it's like, well, I couldn't have fabricated a better story.
Well, my dear, thank you so much. We are going to move on into paranormal gossip. This week, a report from Connecticut came over the wire involving an attempted joyriding incident with none other than the Melonheads. The Melonheads are childlike creatures with notably large noggins who frequent the woods near dirt roads, mainly Dracula Drive. On Tuesday night last, the Melonheads happened upon what appeared to be a man changing a tire on their broken-down vehicle. While the motorist was on hands and knees with a tire iron, 3 melonheads hopped into the vehicle and attempted to start the car. The motorist calmly went to the driver's side door and confronted the melonheads. The childlike, huge craniumed beings instantly knew this was no ordinary human, but one of those dastardly men in black. Namely, one of those alien hybrid ones that have the peculiar temperament comparable to a wet cat. The melonheads leapt from the vehicle and vanished into the forest. Luckily for them, the MIB in question had just gotten off shift and was late for dinner with Indrid Cold. Lucky them. Beckie-Ann Galentine, thank you so much for being on the show today. I really enjoy speaking to you on the paranormal, and I hope that you'll come back.
I will come back anytime. I really appreciate you having me. It's been fun.
Fantastic. And where can people find you on the great internet?
I'm on TikTok and Instagram as My Bloody Galentine, but I will say I'm reaching a point where I'm realizing there are too many nuances of the paranormal that I cannot put it into my posts, and I cannot explain it in words. And so we are kind of moving away, which is why I haven't been posting as much. It's more like there's going to be a book and there's going to be these documentaries. And I think I just need to get, planted as an investigator. Unfortunately, as much as I tried and people saw value in it and they said, we love to see these people, compiling like their investigations and condensing it down to a 30, it's not possible. I'm telling you that there's not enough to see. So it's been a revelation for me.
Oh, wow. Yes, I commend you and your striving for the truth in some fashion. So and when do you have like a rough date on when like this documentary that you shot? I mean, you just shot it. I know that it takes forever for things to happen in post, but
hopefully soon. I think we're still sorting it out. That's the thing, is we left and we had some knowledge, and something happened like the next day that made us go, huh? So now that's getting added. And now something happened the following day that made us go, oh, this all makes sense now. And it couldn't be condensed. So that's why, when you look at these investigations where they go and they're like, oh, so-and-so is here, this makes sense. It's not contained to the filming. It's still happening. It's happening right now as we speak. So hopefully soon, I think everyone has been lit on fire by this. They are just like, I'm so passionate about this field. Everyone thanked me for the experience. Some people were traumatized. It's going to be a whole thing. But it's going to be really cool. I'm hoping soon because, I did have another one coming out and it's been delayed a lot and it will be out soon. And now I'm like, that'll be okay. That's an investigation. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But this should be, if they represent it, this other time. This is the first time I've been in their ear. I'm like, you have something amazing. It happened. Just see it the way I see it. So hopefully within the year.
Fantastic. I hope so too. And if that is the case, you should come back and plug it to a fare thee well. Thank you once again, Beckie-Ann Galentine. And thank you to my listeners. That's all for the show tonight, kiddies. And remember, embrace the dark, the strange, and unusual. It just may embrace you back. Please consider becoming a Patreon member of the show. You can be a Baby Bat Sticker Club member where you get stickers every month, or you can be a Tarot Speakeasy member where you can get a tarot reading and tarot cards sent to you every month. Please subscribe on patreon.com/The Vampire Talk Show. This has been an Opus Nox Media production. To find out more, go to opusnoxmedia.com.